All right, before we get into the nitty-gritties of the EPF versus the NPS, Feroze, let me come to you first. In order to move to a pension society, which is what both the FM and Jayansana have been saying, do you think this is really the best way to go about it? What's your view?
See, I think it's very important to have all your platforms which are expected to create a pension system for the society on parity with respect to taxation. This was an attempt to bring parity between NPS and EPF.
Right.
But the most important thing when you're doing something like this is to factor in that there are 5 crore people in the EPF scheme with about 8.5 lakh crores thereabouts. That's a large quantum for you to actually retract the taxation and then change it from 1st April. So that's why I think that's a very good move that they've brought it back.
Okay.
Because NPS, in spite of having a tax disadvantage after this rollback, has one big advantage, that it can actually make a person participate into equity, which will actually give you the kicker to undo the tax differential which is there. So I think the tax differential can remain and don't have to bring parity as long as the asset class under the 2 instruments are different, because EPF is debt and NPS allows you 50% in equity. In long periods of time, this 50% can actually give you huge upsides which the taxation can get mitigated from.
Right. Karthik, let me come to... Okay. Feroze, the FM did say that this entire issue is going to be reviewed and, reconsidered possibly going forward. What should the government keep in mind before, suggesting such a proposal or making this kind of a move again?
See, I think if you reconsider this proposal, I personally think taxing a large corpus of a debt investment will actually bring down the return significantly. Like Karthik was mentioning, this 8.7% can't be perpetual. So if you bring it down and then you actually compel a person to buy a pension and annuity scheme, and that is again going to be taxed because you're going to get an inflow and you're going to be subject to income tax. So you are actually getting triple taxed in some cases rather than triple exemption.
Right.
So I would say bringing this back in would be actually unfair, because on debt instruments you are going to have lower debt returns going forward, and you're almost going to have a taxation again. Because what actually ends up happening is generally a person's ATC limit is used already in the form of a home loan maybe, and this is also not getting the benefit during the ATC deduction, most often than not, for people in the higher brackets. So you've not gotten any exemption. Your interest rates are going to be taxed. Initially the corpus was going to be taxed, and the end again you're compelled to buy an annuity, and the pension resulting from the annuity was going to get taxed. So it should not consider this proposal again. That would be my opinion. But of course, as things stand,
we'll have to wait and watch. Yeah. So Feroze, EPF of course is now back to being exempt at all 3 stages, but the NPS has been given yet another boost this year after being under Section 80CCD last year. We've got several more benefits for the NPS. Can we go through the budget announcements with regards to the NPS?
See, the NPS, of course, had not so much of traction as it should have had, because of the huge benefits the NPS actually gives you. To boost that, I think the participation had to go up. That's exactly why there were some exemptions, like the 40% tax-free withdrawal.
Right.
It's a supernormal exception and an exemption given to NPS. In my opinion, the NPS, unlike EPF, I don't think they are competing instruments. They are complementary instruments. Okay, EPF does not have equity. NPS has equity, best managed by the top fund managers of the country at 100 the cost. The most important thing is 2% cost, 2.5% cost, which you end up paying when you buy a mutual fund from the same fund manager. You pay 100 the cost in an NPS, and over long periods of time, like Karthik was mentioning, 3-4% increase in return can have a corpus which is twice more. 2% cost saving can have a corpus almost half times more. If you're going to accumulate 1 crore, you will end up accumulating 1.5 crore just by the cost reduction.
Right.
So in my opinion, they are complementing products. They're not just contradictory pension policies or pensions creating mechanisms.
Right. Welcome back. I'm in conversation with Feroze Azeez and Karthik Jhaveri. Feroze, coming back to you, let's now look at the EPF versus NPS, look at both of them on, because the idea of the government was to bring them on par. How much do you think that is? Because as of now, it looks like the NPS clearly has an advantage over the EPF.
Correct. I think both have their merits.
Okay.
Today, I think it's almost at parity now.
Okay.
40% anyways, from a withdrawal perspective in NPS, has been given an exemption. And then you have the other portion. If you buy an annuity for it, then you don't get taxed.
Right, exactly.
So I personally think they are at parity now. EPF also, after this rollback of this exemption, which was almost removed, I think both are at parity. Now I think it's very important to not just focus on the tax implication of these two and focus beyond that.
Absolutely.
Because returns is what you pay tax on. So,
yes.
so if there's no return, then you pay no tax. So I think NPS's potential to be able to meet somebody's retirement aspirations, because we are living in a high inflationary economy, right? So we have to be very conscious about the fact that EPF, which is a debt instrument, will not be able to ever beat inflation, and you will not be able to produce real return. Then it's just a larger quantum, but the purchasing power of that money is going to be halved, and then you will not be able to live the same lifestyle irrespective of having optically large quantums of 2 crores, 4 crores, but they would be meaningless because inflation over the last 30 years has brought down the value of 100 rupees to 6 rupees. Now that's a large depreciation in rupees value due to inflation. So I personally think they are at parity now, and whatever the little difference is, I think could be debated this way or that way. But I think if you move beyond this whole tax debate and move to the merit of the asset class, I think both have a place, but definitely NPS has a larger space in one's portfolio.
Right. Feroze, wanted to come to you in terms of what we were talking about earlier. There are several aspects to the EPF, in fact, which people are not aware about. Can you take us through some of those?
There are actually, one thing which is a very unfortunate thing is both these vehicles have been made so complex. It becomes very difficult for laymen to comprehend.
Right.
So now there are some aspects which are so unknown. Now, for example, in the EPF, there are actually 2 accounts. One is the EPF itself, Provident Fund, and there's also something called the EPS, Employee Provident Pension Scheme. Right? The employer's contribution of 12% on your basic, out of which 8.33% or 1,250 per month, whichever is higher, goes into this. Actually, all your money does not go into the interest-bearing instrument. And the second part is, whatever goes into EPS doesn't earn you interest. Little is it known. And the second thing is, when you actually withdraw it, you can actually withdraw it from EPF. If you don't have a job for 2 months, you can actually withdraw the money. But the account, which is the EPS account, if you're finished 10 years, you can never withdraw it. And you have to wait until you retire. So there are several such aspects. So if I have to tell you, when you look at withdrawal, there is also a table called Table D. You withdraw the entire amount from EPF. EPS, actually the withdrawal is on the basis of a table called Table D. If you've worked for 9 years, you almost get 9 months of salary. If you've worked for 1 year, you get 1 month of salary, one month of salary from the EPS account. So these are the few aspects, and one very important aspect which youngsters should consider, especially when NPS and EPF debate is happening, is that there is an option for a person who's just started working to opt out of EPF. If you're employed for the first time, and if your PF account is never opened, you actually have an option to say that I don't ever want an EPF account.
An EPF altogether.
So these are the few aspects, but there's several such because it's made so complex. I thought I'll touch upon a few.
Feroze, the other point I wanted to quickly mention was, as of now, there still isn't parity among annuity schemes itself, because the government did announce service tax exemption for the NPS annuities, but as far as your insurance annuities are concerned, lesser service tax, but it still is eligible for service tax. So isn't that something that the government should really look at, bringing parity before trying to move India to a pension society?
Yes, I think that has been the attempt. Reduction in the service tax on one-time pension policies, one-time premium payment pension policies is a step towards bringing parity. Right, 3.5 bringing down to 1.2 is a sizable fall. I think over a period, I personally don't think these 1 and 1.2% will make too much difference, but I think it should be on par, like you rightly pointed out earlier.
All right. I want to end by very quickly asking you that What is the clear message for the investor right now, Karthik? Let me come to you. What should the investor be doing at this point when debating the EPF versus NPS thing?
Okay, the first thing that the investor should do is don't worry and don't panic. Understand that tax is a secondary priority and the merit of an investment is first priority. Number two, understand that up to 31st March 2016, none of your EPF is going to be taxed. For now, anyways, just relax. So if you want to go on and continue with your provident fund because there's now no taxation even after 1st of April 2016, go ahead and continue. But it's also a pretty good idea to open an NPS account. The third is ask your employer if there is a choice to do something in terms of switching. If you want to switch, it is a pretty good idea because one, the markets are in a pretty sort of a recessionary phase at the moment. You will build up some corpus, you will learn how NPS works in the next couple of years, and then you will start enjoying that process. So go ahead and start an NPS account, number 3. And fourth, for business owners, don't worry, take your ATC exemption in your PPF and your ELSS. Don't need to worry about NPS at all because then ELSS is a much superior product and open-ended mutual funds will take care of your retirement. So that's the summarization for most investors.
You concur with that?
Yeah, more or less concur from a perspective of actually creating a corpus. But very importantly, there's also NPS Tier 2 account. That would be significantly better for people as against a mutual fund. So that's one thing which I thought I'll add to Karthik.
All right. So clear message coming in from both our experts here that NPS has the clear advantage over the EPF as of now at least. All right. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining me on the show. With that, it's a wrap on this special show. More news and updates coming up on the other side. Stay tuned.